Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I know we're few, it's Bank Holiday Monday, but you all have to do double volume this morning. Well, once again, we've arrived at our gathering time. The week passed, that's just history. The week ahead, that's a dream. Now is the time when we put aside everything but that which is most necessary to our lives. And in token of that, we light our chalice flame, knowing that it burns within us as well, not just in time and space. And this is what Lisa Doga says about it. Why a flaming chalice? The question comes. It's a cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing. A cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst. A cup of wine for celebration and dedication. The flame of truth, the fire of purification, oil for anointing and healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was the symbol crafted generations ago. And so may it be for us in these days of uncertainty and sorrow and rage, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home. We are few, we're missing only one, and let's invite that spirit with our hymn, number 26 in the Green Book. Spirit divine, attend our prayer. We're using the Green Book this morning because we've sort of overlooked it over the last year or so. Everything's been from the new Purple Book. But some of these good old hymns are just right for what we want. I've got a reading I'm going to do, and it's by somebody called Duro Farrar. And Duro Farrar is the African-American music director of a church, Unitarian Universalist Church in Portland, Oregon. And I chose it because it speaks right now to something that's on my mind, and I wonder if it's on yours as well. It's called Change is a Word on Wheels. Every Sunday morning, the church choir and I spend time in reflection and silence before we begin the first worship service. I often offer my thoughts on the day's theme or the state of the world, providing context to the message that we bring. On a recent Sunday, I said to the choir, so often we make the mistake of living according to our hopes instead of according to our realities. I didn't mean to say it, and I didn't know that I would, but as I did, the statement seemed immediately true. I wonder if in our efforts to be the change we wish to see in the world, we stop short at our ideal selves, the idea of ourselves we are most comfortable with. I wonder how often I think I've already been this change, and I'm waiting idly for the tendencies of the world to catch up. I'm unsettled by how frequently I'm surprised by my own social idiocy. How many times need I screw up the same person's pronouns? Or note that I'm not surprised that the person who just nearly ran me off the road is of a certain race or age, or make immediate assumptions about someone because of what I perceive to be their class. Or maybe this is a better question. How many times do I need to make mistakes at the expense of other people or people's groups before I'm ready to admit that I'm not any better at this than the bigoted and the willfully ignorant? I'm liberal, often painfully so. I am not enlightened. I am not elevated. I am not better. But I believe with everything I am that I can be. So change is a word on wheels. It's not a destination, but a journey. If I am to be change, I must commit to humility and refuse to settle for my own comforting achievements. And I think I probably wouldn't have chosen this reading if I hadn't recently had an experience, which I'll tell you about later, which proved to me that I'm not a hell of a lot better than the Brexiteers and the Trumpians. So we'll do that when time comes. But right now I'm hoping to hear something from Lowell.
Thank you. This is a song written by a lady, an American lady, called Malvina Reynolds. And I was always really pleased to learn that she did not start writing songs until she was 65 years old. So I thought, well, there's hope for me yet. Love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Now love is like a magic penny, hold it too tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it, you'll have so many, they'll roll all over the floor. Love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something away. 'Cause love is something, if you give it away, you end up having more. Love is something, if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something, if you give it away, you end up having more. And more and more and more. And more and more and more.
Thank you. 2 production assistants.
Teamwork.
I need to know which of you is the gaffer and which is the best boy. Yes. And I am the clapper loader. Let's all be glad we're here now. And let's all feel comfortable. Let's feel comfortable as if we are at home. And let's feel the presence of the others who've joined us here in this room, and not to forget those watching from far away this morning. Those who, by some miracle or holy coincidence, have joined us as companions on the one great journey. Let us feel the gratitude swell in our hearts for the one lovely fact of our togetherness, despite all the doubts and the distance we experience. And let us now, to the extent that we are able, give wing to a prayer of benediction for us all. And we are together, but also alone in our purpose, for each of us must make a solitary pilgrimage to the heart of meaning and lay there the troubles and triumphs of our uniqueness, all the things that make us separate, all the things that comprise the solo dance of our lives. It may be that we shall find that our aloneness is only apparent, that in laying ourselves openly on the heart's altar, we discover that in apartness is the promise of final oneness, that you and I and she and he are not we, but one. And it may be that as we descend into the silence, that a bright prayer will infuse us, and that the glow of this encounter can bring light to others. Or it may be that our approach is made in darkness, and that we may find light from the prayers of others. It may be that we feel renewed and transformed, that the shroud of our preoccupations falls away just for an instant. Or it may be that we have only the comfort of a promise, and that will be enough. But we will not find it while I speak. There is only one thing to do now. Go together again, gently and with trust, into the good silence. Heart of meaning, one God of the 1,000 names, we ask only this: that our lives reflect the certainty of oneness in thought and word and deed, that we can face calamity and celebration as two faces of the one life within us and among us. This will suffice. This is our prayer. So be it. Inshallah. Shalom. Amen. Here's something important. We can sing it, number 154 in your green book. Here's some news for you. Pinocchio is 138 years old this year. Not the Disney one. No, that's only 70 something. The original book by Carlo Collodi, which was published in 1883. Now we all remember Pinocchio and what Pinocchio was about. But in case you've forgotten, the carpenter Geppetto makes a marionette from an ordinary piece of wood and is amazed to find that the puppet can speak and move. It even has a personality, a bit bratty and dishonest, but still somehow lovable. The most striking thing, though, is that when Pinocchio tells a lie, his nose gets longer. Remember that? Yeah. That makes it pretty hard to be dishonest, you'd think. That beats all lie detectors, I would say. Good thing we don't have noses like that, huh? None of these masks would fit anybody in this room. Not that we're all liars in the conventional sense of that word. Little white porkies, yeah, a bit of editing of our CVs, possibly. If we happen to come across a little extra cash, maybe it doesn't appear straight away on our self-assessment forms. Now, I'm not asking anybody to rigidly hold to true remarks when they're merely hurtful or inappropriate. I think the world would grind to a halt if everyone said everything they think. I think that's a different form of truthfulness. I'm talking about a different kind of untruthfulness. The playwright Henrik Ibsen called this a life lie, a kind of yarn you spin to explain your life to yourself and to other people, without which, he says, you can't have any form of happiness. Well, personally, I'm not too sure about that. To the extent we can see the story of Pinocchio as a parable for human behavior, we can say that the real journey is one of moving from being a wooden, artificial person to being a living one, a real boy, the abandonment of the lie altogether. And so that makes me think about the process that we call acquiring integrity. Now, that word integrity is one of the most misused words in our language. A lot of people are said to have integrity when it's perfectly clear to the outsider they have anything but. It means they've got away with stuff so far, and that their other bits aren't showing. It usually means a kind of trustworthiness, a sense of personal discipline, but it also has a sort of unpleasantly stuffy ring to it, you know, sitting alongside Victorian values like thrift. Thrift isn't valued much now, is it? And self-denial. That's considered really out. Whatever it is, if you ask the opinion polls, we want our politicians to have it, don't we? We want the prime minister or the president to always be the same smiling hero figure who goes to church on Sunday or the equivalent, tosses a frisbee with the children in the park, guiding the nation through the white waters of the pandemic and the foreign wars that we seem to be addicted to get stuck in. We don't want him to have a bank account in the Cayman Islands. We don't want him to have a girlfriend tucked away in Milton Keynes. We want him to live in the big front room of his house with all the curtains drawn and all the lights on. But is that even remotely realistic? Knowing what we sad and comical human beings are really like, do we really want a false figure to lead us? The real meaning of the word integrity, it comes from integration. To integrate all the various parts of yourself, to pull it all together, to abandon subterfuge, to be the same person, more or less, in all situations. Does that sound easy? Have you ever noticed how relating to different people brings out a different character in you? Like I've noticed that around some people, I feel like the life of the party, always telling jokes, and they really enjoy my company, and I feel like some kind of a star. And around other people, I feel somehow inadequate, as if I haven't brushed my teeth or remembered to zip my trousers. And it's the same me. It's just put in different contexts. These forbidding aspects sometimes of these people make you feel inadequate. And we've got this whole repertoire of languages as well. When I'm in North Carolina, back home, I have this kind of redneck accent, just pops up out of nowhere. And there's some words in frequent use in my vocabulary that my mother never heard me speak. I even have a different sort of voice for Spanish speakers. When I'm in Spain, I become someone called Arturo. And my voice deepens and to some extent coarsens. My diction is different. I'm still the same person, but that's a kind of an aspect of myself. And I don't mean any deliberate posing or play acting. They're all me. And you're the same. All of you are the same. I once got a pass in a Latin exam by correctly translating the following phrase, which happens to be the motto of the state of North Carolina, which, by the way, shares a birthday with me. Here's the phrase, esse quam videre. Any takers? You're about to say it, aren't you, Jill? It means to be rather than to seem. Yeah? Not only is that a remarkably noble sentiment for a state that at that time was practicing slavery, it points up that the founders knew that there was this little problem human beings had about seeming and not being. If you extend that a bit, you find that there was awareness of the temptation to just get away with it, to not do it, and say we did. So building integrity is a long process. It's like becoming a real boy if you're a lump of wood. Sometimes an experience of integration seems to follow from a conversion experience, like Paul on the road to Damascus. Scales fall from people's eyes. Their lives acquire new purpose and direction. Like me, I got saved a couple of times when I was growing up. Anybody here ever get saved besides me? I always feel lonesome. You got saved, Mark, good. You get saved and then it doesn't stick. For a while, everything seems straightforward. You have this new sense of purpose. You have this nice euphoric glow. The trouble is, after a while, you feel yourself beginning to backslide and then landslide. Before long, you're back to your old ways, and if anything, enjoying it a bit more. That and a new dislike for religious conversion in general. Maybe that's why I make a better Unitarian than I would Baptist. It wasn't real integration. Not at all. It wasn't integrity. It was denial. What had happened was that I resolved on this superficial level to make myself into a good person. Forget the little dishonesties, the secret selfishness, the craving for admiration. They were part of my old self, now replaced by a brand new, holy me. And even Paul, some people call him St. Paul, the spin doctor of the Messianic cult which became the church, confessed to backsliding. He called his problem the thorn in the flesh, which people have variously interpreted as an appetite for the sensual and being attracted to other men. I would call it the legitimate complaint of a part of human nature that's being stifled. Because ignoring parts of ourselves, banishing them below stairs, is not only bad psychology, it's bad religion. If everybody that lives in you, except the one you display to the world, is a sinner condemned to death, that's an insult to God, or if you prefer, the universe. Closing elements of yourself away from the light is like banishing sinners from the Garden of Eden. And the kind of God that gets up to that sort of thing can't be all that confident about his own creation. And locking less convenient elements of yourself in the dark, it can only make you sick. Real integration, the acquiring of integrity, has got to include every aspect of yourself. I once attended a funeral. This was a very important funeral to me. I wasn't conducting it, I was attending it. It was a funeral of a man who had become a minister in the Unitarian Church rather late in life. After a dodgy beginning, he had been a Congregationalist minister, had been hiding the fact that he was gay, was caught soliciting for prostitution in a public men's toilet, was fired, chased out of his church. In his despair, he started drinking. He wound up catching HIV. And when I met him, he was already quite ill with full-blown AIDS, walking with a stick. I'm going to call him Richard, but that's not his real name. Richard was a good man. I left his funeral feeling worse than when I went in. And that's the opposite of my usual experience. No mention was made of his HIV, of his being gay, of his years of struggle with an unforgiving society, of his having fought his way back from the bottle. No mention of that was made at all. What was mentioned was the true stuff, the last 5 or 6 years of his life where he spent as a much-loved minister in a London district church. Well, it's understandable, and I'm not making any criticism of the minister who conducted that funeral. It was done to protect the sensibilities of the family, which is a legitimate reason, but not one that I wholeheartedly agree with. That's always a very tricky call. And the judgment was made to satisfy their longing for apparent respectability. But it lacked integrity. I think Richard was on his way to becoming a real boy. If Pinocchio wants his nose to remain normal size, because size may just matter after all, he doesn't have to invent a new character and play it. If he wants his wooden life to take on the good feel of flesh, all he has to do is stop lying. Stop lying in his words, stop lying in his deeds, stop lying in his own self-concept. Stop rewriting that life lie that Ibsen's talking about. And not just to impress Geppetto, but to get free. And what I say sounds very appealing. It sounds like something I long for, something I want, and yet something that's very hard. The gulf between how we wish to seem and how we really are isn't really as wide as all that. Most of our friends already know what we're like. They do. They don't tell us, but they know what we're like. Someone told me recently after a sermon, they said, "Art, that was great. You know, you're so honest up there in the pulpit." Hey, you know. What I should have said was, if you only knew what I didn't say up there. But I like it. I like it better than being told I'm brilliant or handsome or gifted. It means I'm making a bit of headway in this passage from wood to flesh. Not a lot, but a little. What I should have said back was, thank you very much, but we haven't even started yet. And that might have been any of us. Feel your nose. Can you feel that? Yeah. It seems normal sized. If I were going to add one commandment to the list of do's and don'ts that we got from the holy books, it might take the form of the words of a famous rabbi, and it's often expressed in different language. This famous rabbi said, when you get to heaven, God won't ask you why you were not more like Moses. God will ask you why you weren't more like yourself. So I add this about life. You show me yours, and I'll show you mine. Amen. This part of the service is where I often ask you to get your wallets out, but we're not collecting because of COVID. What we are doing is we got a little hexagonal wooden box on the table outside the door, and if you'd like to contribute to our cause, just put some money in there. No pressure. I got some news, well, bits of news, some really good news. Are you sitting down? Daniel, our favorite pianist guy, has been granted. Woo! He's been granted asylum, and so he says he'll come around and join us, possibly on the Gathering of the Water service, to play. He plays and sings beautifully. He's a real gifted guy. So we'll see Daniel again, and it just amazes me that there's still some good sense in the home office. And speaking of that, in 2 weeks from today, is our annual Gathering of the Water service, in which we try to get everybody back from wherever they've been. And in this case, it means for the last year and a half, because people have been shielding and isolating. People got out of the habit of coming to church, and maybe some of them are still frightened about coming to church. But let's try to get as many people back as we can. Don't forget to collect some water wherever you are this summer, and then we share the water together every year. And afterwards, Lowell and I, and probably poor David, will have to help out as well. We're going to set up that barbecue, which we paid a fortune for, and I think we've used it once. We're going to have a barbecue, so we'll try to find some vegan burgers as well as the other kind. So that's in 2 weeks' time, on the 12th of September. Now, any news, anything I need to mention? Marjorie's funeral is going to be on the 20th of September. We are very sorry to lose Marjorie at the age of 99, having been one of the pillars of this church community for so many years. And it'll be at 2:30 p.m. here on the 20th of September. We'll announce that again before. Let's sing number 171, which is What Love Can Do.
Will
Now we say so long, not goodbye. God willing, that's for another day. But in our separateness, as in our togetherness, may we continue to look after one another, because by now we know that we can, until we meet again. Amen.
Amen.